Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are really getting into something most of us think we have a handle on, fitness.
I do.
But if you ask someone on the street, what does being fit mean, they'll probably talk about how they look, or maybe running a 10K.
Right, or they'll point to the calorie counter on a treadmill. I burned 600 calories.
Exactly. And for the person who needs to operate at a high level, what we call the executive athlete, that definition, it's not just soft, it's basically useless.
It's the difference between exercising as a hobby and training as a professional endeavor. And our focus for this deep dive is a strategic report from sundry.com called the Bioenergetic Imperative, Maximizing Work Capacity.
I love that title.
It's great, isn't it? It tells you right away, this isn't about guesswork, it's about engineering.
Yes, engineering. We're moving out of the world of casual workouts and into physiological engineering. So our mission today is to really unpack this core metric they focus on, work capacity, and the method to get there, metabolic conditioning, or MetCon.
Exactly. And what sundry.com does so well is frame MetCon not as just a bunch of random hard workouts.
Which is what a lot of people think it is.
They do. They see it as chaos.
Yeah.
But it's actually the very precise strategic manipulation of how your body stores, delivers, and uses its energy capital. And to do that, you have to understand the deep infrastructure. We're talking about the body's energy architecture.
The fuel lines, the engine itself. Okay, let's start there. Let's really separate these casual fitness ideas from what sundry.com calls operational readiness.
Well, the report is pretty critical of the status quo. It argues that mixing up fitness with aesthetics or, just counting calories, it gives you zero insight into actual high performance.
Right.
An executive can look great in a suit, but if they can't handle a sudden physical demand after hours of intense cognitive work, then their fitness, by this report's measure, is low.
I see this all the time. People get obsessed with that calorie number. They'll do an hour-long spin class, feel great because the machine says 800 calories, but their ability to, say, sprint up a flight of stairs with a heavy bag and not be completely wrecked it's just not there.
That's a perfect example of the problem. Burning calories is just a thing that happens when you move. You burn calories watching this.
Sure.
The objective, as sundry.com lays it out in this deep dive, is not caloric expenditure. It's metabolic efficiency. We are engineering the ability to do more work in less time and then, crucially, recover faster.
Okay, so let's get that definition down. Sundry.com is very precise about what work capacity actually is. It's a three-part definition.
It is. It's a holistic measure. First, it's the ability to generate explosive power when required. That's your immediate on-demand strength.
The sprint.
Exactly. Second, it's the capacity to sustain output when necessary. So not just for a second, but for minutes at a high pace. And third, and this is arguably the most important piece, it's the ability to recover rapidly to do it again.
If you fail on any one of those three, you're compromised.
Your work capacity is fundamentally flawed. That's the argument.
That really clarifies the objective. We're not exercising anymore, we're training. We're engineering a physiological machine. And if we're doing that, we need to know what currency that machine runs on.
And it is a chemical currency. The central player in this whole architecture is something called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP.
ATP.
Sundry.com identifies ATP as the body's one and only universal energy dollar. It doesn't matter if you're lifting a weight, solving a problem, or healing tissue, the energy for that transaction comes from breaking a phosphate bond in an ATP molecule.
It's the fuel for everything.
Everything. Which brings us to how we actually train. Because your body doesn't just have one big gas tank for ATP. It's much more sophisticated.
It's a hybrid.
It's a hybrid engine. That's the key concept in the MetCon framework from sundry.com. Your body uses three distinct but always overlapping pathways to create that ATP. And MetCon really is about forcing the body to get better at switching between those systems under stress.
So we're training the handoff.
We're training the handoff, the transition, the efficiency of the switch, sometimes within a single minute of a workout.
Okay, this is where the deep dive really starts. Let's get into this architecture of energy. Pathway number one, the Physiological system. This is your V12 engine, pure horsepower.
This is max intensity, absolutely maximal. Sundry.com is talking about efforts that demand 100% output. Think the first few strides of a 100-meter sprint, a 1-rep max deadlift, or a couple of really explosive box jumps.
So the power's huge, but the duration is tiny.
Extremely brief. The operational window is, let's be generous, 0 to 10 seconds. That's it. And the fuel isn't carbs or fat. It's the tiny bit of ATP you have stored directly in your muscle cells, plus a backup battery called phosphocreatine, or PCR.
And that backup battery, the PCR, it can recharge ATP almost instantly.
Instantly. It's ready to go for that sudden maximal demand. But you burn through that stock almost immediately.
So if we're trying to engineer the system to be more powerful, how does sundry.com say we should train it?
This is where most people get it wrong. Because the goal is to train maximal power, you have to make sure every single rep you do is actually maximal. And to do that, you need to almost completely refill that PCR tank between efforts.
Which means you have to rest.
A lot.
A lot. Sundry.com is really clear on this. It requires maximal effort followed by significant recovery. We're talking work-to-rest ratios of 1 to 12 all the way up to 1 to 20.
Wait, a 1 to 20 ratio. So if I sprint all out for 10 seconds, I need to rest for up to 200 seconds. That's over 3 minutes.
Yes.
Why so long? Why can't I just rest for a minute and go again? I'll feel recovered.
But you won't be recovered, not chemically.
Yeah.
And that's the detail that separates smart training from just getting tired. Resynthesizing PCR is a process that takes time and it needs oxygen. To get back to about 90% of your stores, you need roughly 3 minutes of rest.
And if I only rest for 1 minute?
You might have recovered, say, 60 or 70% of that immediate power. So when you start your next sprint, you're already starting with a handicap. Ah, I see. And if I start with a handicap, my effort can't be truly maximal anymore.
It can't.
So I'm not training the phosphagen system anymore. I'm drifting into the next one.
Exactly. You're now training the glycolytic system by default. If your goal is to get more explosive, you absolutely have to respect the science of PCR resynthesis. It's why you see powerlifters and sprinters resting for what looks like forever between sets. They're scientifically refueling the most powerful but also the most limited tank.
And once that powerful limited tank runs dry, we shift into that really uncomfortable zone. Pathway 2. The glycolytic system. This is what people think of as the MetCon grind.
Oh, it's absolutely the grind. It's that burning, heavy-like feeling where you start making deals with yourself just to finish. This system kicks in and dominates from about 15 seconds up to around 3 minutes of high-intensity effort.
And the fuel source changes completely.
Completely. We've shifted from stored ATP and PCR to glucose, which comes from carbohydrates stored in your muscles and liver in the form of glycogen. This pathway makes ATP way faster than the long-game system, but it comes at a cost. It produces byproducts.
And this brings us to the famous lactate myth. For decades, we were all told that lactate causes muscle soreness, that it's a metabolic waste product. Sundry.com says that's completely wrong.
It's one of the most persistent myths in fitness, and busting it is critical to understanding how to train for high performance. Lactate itself is not the enemy. Lactate is fuel.
Okay, so what's actually happening? What's the burn?
When you break down glucose really fast without enough oxygen, which is what happens in this glycolytic state, your body produces lactate, but it also produces hydrogen ions. It's the buildup of those hydrogen ions that makes the muscle environment acidic.
And that acidity is the burn.
That's the burn. That acidity interferes with the enzymes involved in muscle contraction and basically puts the brakes on everything.
So what happens to lactate?
The lactate is actually your friend. It can be shuttled out of the working muscle and taken to the liver, where it gets converted back into glucose to be used later. Or, even better, it can be used directly as fuel by other tissues, like your heart or other muscle fibers that aren't as fatigued.
So MetCon isn't about stopping lactate production. It's about training your body to clean up its own mess more efficiently.
Perfectly put. We're training the body's buffering capacity. By repeatedly pushing into this zone, you force your body to get better at neutralizing those acidic hydrogen ions and shuttling that valuable lactate fuel around. This is what raises your anaerobic threshold. It means you can go harder for longer before that acid bath shuts you down.
That is real physiological engineering, improving the internal plumbing. Okay, let's move to the foundation, pathway 3, the oxidative system. The long game. Most people think this is just for marathon runners.
And that's a huge mistake. Sundry.com really emphasizes how foundational this system is for all high-intensity work. This is the system that takes over after about 3 minutes and can go, well, for hours. It runs on oxygen, it's aerobic, and it can use both carbohydrates and fats for fuel.
But if my MetCon workout is a bunch of short, intense bursts, why do I need a powerful marathon engine?
Because of the third part of our definition of work capacity, rapid recovery.
Ah, of course.
The oxidative system isn't just for long runs. It's the system that's working overtime during your rest intervals. Sundry.com is emphatic on this point. A poor aerobic base will cause you to fail in a MetCon workout. period.
Because you can't recover between rounds.
You can't. If your long game engine is weak, you can't use oxygen efficiently enough to repay the debt you incurred during the high-intensity burst. You can't replenish your phosphagen stores. You can't clear out the metabolic byproducts. You can't get ready for the next round.
So I could have an amazing sprint, but if my aerobic base is terrible, my performance is going to fall off a cliff after the first or second round because I can't catch my breath.
That's the crucial link. Training the oxidative system, that slow zone 2 work, it builds the infrastructure. It increases the number of capillaries feeding your muscles with oxygen, and critically, it increases the size and number of your mitochondria.
The power plants inside the muscle
The
cells.
power plants. More and bigger power plants mean you can process fuel and clear waste much, much faster. And that is what leads to that hallmark of the elite athlete. They look like they recover instantly.
It's so fascinating how integrated it is. You're not just training one system. A great MetCon athlete is a true hybrid with a powerful sprint, a high tolerance for the grind, and a massive, durable foundation that services the other two.
And that durability is what separates the elite from the amateur. It allows the body to handle stress and bounce back, not just in the muscles, but in the nervous system too.
And this whole approach, this focus on intensity, it isn't brand new. Sundried.com actually traces it back quite a long way.
That's right. The early groundwork was being laid over a century ago. Scientists like August Crowe were doing foundational research on physiology. By the 1930s, you had coaches in the field using concepts like fartlek, which is Swedish for speed play.
Just alternating between fast and slow running.
Exactly. They just instinctively knew that varying the intensity was effective. They were stressing multiple energy systems without even having the precise language for it yet.
But then, in the second half of the 20th century, we took a big detour. We got obsessed with long, slow, steady-state aerobics.
We did. It was a massive cultural shift. Duration became the gold standard, not intensity. The philosophy was LSD, long, slow distance. And look, it has its merits for general cardiovascular health, but Sundry.com points out that it completely ignores the massive efficiency gains you get from intensity training.
But the data eventually brought us back. And the study that really shattered that old model was the Tabata protocol in 1996.
It was a game changer, absolutely revolutionary because it quantified the incredible return on investment, the ROI of intensity. Dr. Izumi Tabata took 2 groups. One group did an hour of moderate, steady-state cycling 5 days a week.
The standard gym-goer model.
Pretty much. The other group did just 4 minutes of high-intensity interval training, 20 seconds of all-out work, followed by 10 seconds of rest, repeated 8 times. And they only did that 4 days a week.
And the results were just staggering for efficiency.
They were. The high-intensity group improved their anaerobic capacity by 28%, which you'd expect. But here's the kicker. They also improved their aerobic capacity, their VO2 max, just as much as the group that was training for an hour a day.
Despite doing a fraction of the work.
A tiny fraction. It was the empirical proof that you don't need huge volume if you have sufficient intensity.
That's the ultimate biohack for a busy executive. It's compressed efficiency. And Sundry.com makes a point that now this kind of data-driven approach is mainstream.
It absolutely is. You have movements like CrossFit that basically took these principles and applied them to a huge range of functional movements. And today, the big leap forward is the democratization of data. We have heart rate variability trackers, power meters on bikes and rowers, apps that estimate your lactate threshold. We've gone from guessing to executing based on real physiological data.
Okay, so let's talk about that ROI of MetCon in more detail. Beyond just saving time, what are the big efficiency gains we get from this style of training, according to the Sundry.com report?
They identify 3 major ones. The first is what they call the metabolic dividend, or EPOC.
Excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. We hear this marketed as the afterburn effect.
It is, but the marketing hype doesn't do the science justice. EPOC is basically a state of physiological debt. When you do a high-intensity workout, you violently disrupt your body's internal balance, its homeostasis, and the analytical view from Sundry.com is that your body has to take out a huge oxygen loan to pay that debt back after the workout is over.
And that payback process costs energy.
A lot of energy. It keeps your metabolism elevated not just for an hour or 2, but for up to 24 hours post-exercise.
What are the specific things the body is doing during that 24-hour period that costs so much energy?
It's a long list. It's restoring those ATP and PCR stores. It's clearing out all the lactate and hydrogen ions to get your muscle pH back to normal. It's bringing your core body temperature down. It's dealing with the hormonal surge. And maybe the most costly part, it's repairing all the microscopic muscle damage you created. You're forcing your body to work for you long after you've left the gym.
That 24-hour dividend really puts the 20 minutes of suffering into perspective. Okay, the second ROI factor is hormonal assets.
Right. Intense exercise triggers a really beneficial hormonal cascade. Sundried.com specifically points to growth hormone and testosterone.
Two key players in building and repairing tissue.
And in regulating body composition, growth hormone is vital for repair and lipolysis. That's the breakdown of fat. And testosterone is critical for muscle protein synthesis.
But what about the stress hormone, cortisol? A lot of people worry that super intense training will just spike cortisol and leave them stressed out.
It's a valid concern, and the report addresses it head-on. Yes, cortisol is acutely elevated during a MetCon session. It has to be. That's how your body mobilizes the energy it needs. But the key finding is that properly dosed MetCon acts like a vaccine for your stress response system.
An inoculation against stress. I like that.
Over time, by subjecting your body to this controlled, acute stress, you teach it to become more efficient at resolving that stress. The result is that your baseline day-to-day cortisol levels actually decrease.
So you use managed stress in your training to become more resilient and calmer in your everyday life.
Exactly. It's counterintuitive, but incredibly powerful. And the third major efficiency gain is hybridization.
Which is about breaking down the old wall between strength training and cardio.
Yes. Traditional training puts them in separate boxes. You lift weights, then you go for a run. The result is often an athlete who is strong but has no engine, or has a great engine but no strength.
MetCon forces them together.
It forces integration. When you do something like high-repetition thrusters or heavy kettlebell snatches for time, you're demanding high levels of both muscular strength and cardiovascular output simultaneously. This double demand stimulates two crucial adaptations inside the muscle.
Which are?
One, you get increased capillary density, which is like building more roads to deliver fuel and remove waste. And two, you get increased mitochondrial volume more and better power plants. So as sundried.com puts it, you're not just building a bigger engine, you're upgrading the engine's internal components to make it more powerful and more fuel efficient at the same time.
Okay, so we know the goal is work capacity, and we know the mechanisms. Now we need the strategy. Sundried.com has a great line. Random exertion yield random results.
It's so true. If you want to target specific adaptations, you need structured protocols. You can't just throw a bunch of exercises at a wall and hope for the best.
So the report details 3 core protocols that are the foundation of modern MetCon. Let's start with the first one, AMRAP.
AMRAP stands for as many rounds as possible. The logic is you have a fixed time, say 15 minutes, and a set circuit of exercises. Your goal is to complete as many rounds of that circuit as you can before the clock runs out.
And the stimulus here is what?
It's a huge test of your glycolytic system, but it's also a test of pacing and mental fortitude. It forces you to self-regulate.
How does it do that?
Because it sets a trap. The natural tendency is to fly out of the gate, go way too fast. But if you do that, you'll redline, flood your system with acid, and your pace will fall off a cliff. You'll experience a catastrophic system failure. The only way to get a good score in an AMRAP is to find that sustainable pace right below your threshold and just hang on.
It's a test of decision-making under physical stress. Very relevant for an executive athlete.
Right.
Okay, next up, EMOM.
EMOM is every minute on the minute. Here, the logic is different. You have a set task to do, for instance, 10 kettlebell swings and 5 burpees. You do that at the start of each minute. Whatever time is left in that minute is your rest.
So if it takes me 40 seconds, I get 20 seconds of rest.
Exactly. And the stimulus here is a direct, ruthless test of your recovery efficiency.
Because that rest period is going to shrink.
It shrinks exponentially. As you get tired, the work takes longer. 40 seconds becomes 45, then 50. Suddenly, your 20 seconds of rest is only 5 seconds. It creates this pressure cooker environment that just exposes a weak oxidative system. You have to be efficient just to earn the right to rest.
So if I fail an EMOM, the data isn't just my muscles got tired. The data is my aerobic engine couldn't recover fast enough in that shrinking window.
It's a direct indictment of your aerobic base. It forces you to adapt and become better at recovering quickly. And the last one is the chipper.
This one just sounds painful. Big numbers.
They are big numbers. A chipper is a long linear list of high volume movements, something like 100 wall balls, then 75 box jumps, then 50 pull-ups. You just chip away at the work, one movement at a time.
So the stimulus is just pure volume tolerance.
It's volume tolerance and systemic fatigue management. You learn very quickly that you can't just go unbroken on 100 reps of anything. It forces you to break the monumental task down into small, manageable, operational blocks. It's a mental game of strategy and pacing.
So moving from the single workout to the bigger picture, sundry.com outlines a standard 6-week programming cycle, the macro strategy.
Yes, and this is crucial. You cannot just live in that high-intensity red zone all the time. You need planned waves of stress and recovery.
So weeks 1 and 2 are the accumulation phase.
Correct. Here, the focus is on building volume and perfecting movement quality under moderate loads. You're building your aerobic base and making sure your technique is flawless before you add intensity. You're accumulating capacity.
Then weeks 3 and 4, you shift to intensification.
Now you start adding weight, increasing the speed, and deliberately pushing that anaerobic threshold. The workouts get more uncomfortable. You're reducing rest periods and forcing the body to get better at buffering all that acidity.
And the cycle culminates in weeks 5 and 6, the peak phase.
This is where you test yourself. Maximal intensity. The workouts are short, the loads are heavy, the pacing is all out. You're going for personal bests and getting a real measure of your new, improved work capacity.
And this whole structure is designed to prevent something we touched on earlier, central nervous system, or CNS, burnout.
Absolutely. CNS burnout is when the signal from your brain to your muscles starts to fail, even if the muscles themselves aren't fully fatigued. The symptoms can be subtle. Your grip strength disappears. You feel mentally foggy. You lose motivation.
And constantly training at max intensity will fry your CNS.
It will. This cycle prevents that by building in those lighter accumulation weeks. It gives your nervous system a chance to recover and adapt, so it's ready for the next wave of intensity. It respects the neurological cost of training.
Which is just as important as the muscular cost. Okay, let's pivot to logistics, equipment. What's the ROI on different tools according to sundry.com?
Well, the great thing about MetCon is that the barrier to entry is low. For a home setup, sundry.com says the single highest ROI tool you can own is a kettlebell.
Why a kettlebell over, say, a dumbbell?
Because of its offset center of gravity. When you swing or snatch a kettlebell, the weight isn't balanced. It's constantly pulling you off center, forcing all your small stabilizer muscles to fire like crazy to control it. It builds incredible core strength and stability.
What about those specialized machines we see in gyms?
For pure metabolic testing, the air bike is king. It's zero impact, and the resistance from the fan is exponential. The harder you push, the harder it pushes back. It's a brutal, honest test of your glycolytic system.
And the rower?
The rowing ergometer is the measure of full body horsepower. Sundry.com notes it uses something like 80% of your body's muscle mass. It's a perfect tool for systemic MetCon, blending power and endurance.
Finally, what about heavy MetCon?
For that, you need the barbell. There's just no substitute for moving a large external load quickly. Heavy cleans, snatches, deadlifts for reps. That creates a systemic stress that you can't replicate with lighter tools. It's essential for training the phosphagen system under heavy, complex loads.
And to run this high-performance engine, you need the right fuel. Sundry.com is very clear on this. MetCon is a glycolytic-dominant activity, which means we need to talk about carbohydrates.
This is a non-negotiable point in the report. They acknowledge that low-carb or ketogenic diets can be useful for sedentary people, but for the executive athlete who is demanding high output, fat is just too slow-burning a fuel. For anaerobic power, you need glucose. It's that simple.
So the timing of that fuel is critical. What are the pre- and post-workout logistics?
Pre-workout, you want complex carbs about 2 to 3 hours beforehand to make sure your glycogen stores are full. But post-workout is where the real engineering happens. That's your critical window for recovery and repair.
And this is where that specific 3-to-1 ratio comes in.
That's right. For optimal recovery from glycolytic training, sundry.com recommends a 3-to-1 ratio of carbohydrates to protein.
Why that specific ratio? Why not just a protein shake?
Because you need the carbs to trigger an insulin spike. Insulin is a storage hormone. It's like a key that unlocks your muscle cells. That insulin spike opens the door to shuttle 2 things in. First, the glucose to rapidly restock your depleted glycogen, and second, the amino acids from the protein to start the muscle repair process immediately.
So the carbs are the logistics team that lets the protein, the construction crew, get to work.
That is a perfect analogy. Without the carbs, the protein is just waiting outside the construction site. This goes right back to the idea that training is the stimulus, but recovery is where the adaptation actually happens.
And a huge part of that recovery is the central nervous system. How do we monitor for CNS fatigue in a practical way?
The report mentions subjective things like irritability or poor sleep, which are important. But for an objective, measurable data point, they highlight grip strength loss.
Group strength.
Simple and incredibly effective. It's a direct window into your neural drive. The small muscles in your hands and forearms are very sensitive to CNS fatigue. If you notice on Tuesday that you can't hold on to a pull-up bar for as long as you could on Monday, that's your nervous system waving a red flag. It's time for a deload or a rest day.
And that kind of data-driven approach helps mitigate the risks that come with intensity.
Yes. The report is clear. Mechanical failure always precedes metabolic failure. The moment your form starts to break down under fatigue, your back rounds on a deadlift, your knees cave on a squat, you have to scale back. An injury will set you back weeks or months.
Which brings us to scaling, which so many people see as a sign of weakness.
And Sundry.com says that's completely backward. Scaling is a sign of intelligence. The goal of the workout is the metabolic stimulus, not the number on the barbell. If you have to use a lighter weight to maintain perfect form and high intensity, you are winning. You are achieving the goal of the training session. The ego gets you nowhere.
So let's talk about implementation. How do the pros do it? Sundry.com talks about the polarized training model.
This is what most elite endurance and hybrid athletes do. They don't live in the middle ground. They spend the vast majority of their time, about 80% in zone 2.
Which is very low intensity,
Flicking out
conversational pace.
Exactly. They spend hours and hours there building a massive, durable aerobic engine. It builds mitochondrial density without crushing their nervous system. It's the boring but essential foundation building work.
And the other 20%.
That is spent at the absolute opposite end of the spectrum, zone 5. All out, maximal intensity, pushing their anaerobic limits. And the key warning from Sundry.com is what they avoid. They stay out of the black hole.
That middle zone of moderate intensity where most of us live?
Yes. It's that pace where you're working hard, you're sweating, but you're not going hard enough to trigger maximal adaptation, and you're not going easy enough to promote recovery. The fatigue you accumulate is high, but the adaptive benefit is low. Their advice is simple. If you're going to go easy, go really easy. If you're going to go hard, go all out. Avoid the messy middle.
Okay, so let's get into some real-world, actionable advice. First up, treat training like a meeting. Put it in the calendar.
Consistency will always beat intensity over the long term. 3 solid 20-minute sessions every week for a year is infinitely better than going hard every day for a month and then burning out. It's about compound interest.
And for someone with no equipment, the budget approach.
Body weight and gravity are all you need. The report suggests a classic workout like 10 rounds of 10 burpees, 15 air squats, and a 200-meter run. That single workout hits all 3 energy systems beautifully.
What about a middle-of-the-road investment?
1 kettlebell and 1 jump rope. The possibilities are endless. A simple workout could be 5 rounds of weight. 1 minute of kettlebell swings followed by 1 minute of jump rope with a minute of rest. It's brutally effective.
And for the time-crunched executive, it all comes back to intensity.
Yes. If you only have 10 minutes, your intensity has to go through the roof. A 10-minute AMRAP should feel so hard that the thought of doing it for 11 minutes seems impossible. You have to compress the stimulus.
Finally, the warning against training hard 7 days a week.
Sundry.com says it's the fastest way to get injured and burn out your CNS. They recommend a structure like 3 days on, 1 day off for active recovery, then 2 days on and 1 day completely off. Your body doesn't get stronger in the gym, it gets stronger when it's recovering from the gym.
Okay, let's wrap this all up with a rapid-fire summary. The top 10 tips from Sundry.com for maximizing work capacity.
Number 1, never sacrifice mechanics for the clock. Form first, always.
2, respect the warm-up. 10 minutes of dynamic prep is non-negotiable.
3, build the aerobic base. Do the boring zone 2 work. It supports everything else.
4, scale the stimulus. Leave your ego at the door. The goal is the metabolic effect.
5, data is king. Log everything. You cannot manage what you do not measure.
6, fuel the machine. Carbs are not the enemy. They are high-performance fuel.
7, prioritize sleep. This is where adaptation happens. 8 hours should be the goal.
8, manage the CNS. If your grip is weak or you're unusually irritable, take a rest day.
9, vary the domains. Mix short sprints, medium grinds, and long, slow efforts.
And 10, join the community. There's a reason group classes are so effective. Shared suffering builds resilience. This has been an incredible deep dive based entirely on the strategic framework from Sundry.com. We have completely redefined fitness, moving away from just counting calories to focusing on the real metric, work capacity.
And we've learned that MetCon isn't random. It's the specific engineering of our 3 energy systems to build a powerful, resilient hybrid engine. It's about knowing when to push, how to push, and just as importantly, when to recover.
So I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. Building on that idea of CNS recovery data, We've established that sleep is when the hardware gets repaired and the software gets updated. But what if you started using your daily recovery metrics like that grip strength test? Not just to decide if you need a rest day, but to proactively dictate your training load for the entire week.
Using it as a planning tool.
Exactly. Instead of just reacting to fatigue, you'd be using these subtle data points as your primary operational guide, fine-tuning your entire performance architecture before stress ever has a chance to become an injury. You would be truly engineering your performance in real time.
You become the architect of your own capacity. The data is there. Use it.
Until the next deep dive, be strategic in your training.